stuff. It really is. Okay, so it looks like we are streaming live. I'm starting to see the digits come across, and we're up at 10 seconds. So anyway, I have a couple ladies behind the glass who are going to help me out tonight and get us shared out into the paranormal society where the strangeness is everywhere. With me tonight, everybody, is Steve Ghostman. And it's not really going to be like an interview. It's going to be insight, information. We're going to probably talk on different levels of different things. And you started off in the green room with me, Steve, and you said that once upon a time, a lady told you that you were surrounded by a light and you stood out from everybody else. Um, how did you feel about that when somebody approaches
Yeah,
you and
yeah,
uh,
the human
and
spirit.
yeah, do you actually have communication or feel like you can or do?
Well, I believe I had empathic abilities when I was younger, but I had nobody to talk to about it or anything like that. I just thought my head was messed up. So I had to put up emotional blocks. I mean, I just out of nowhere, I'd either feel just angry or all of a sudden sad, almost to the point I wanted to cry, and this is coming out of nowhere. So, I mean, later on in life, I come to after talking to some empaths and everything, they said, "Yeah, that's what it's like. You feel their feelings." But at that time,
Yeah.
I didn't understand it, so I put up these emotional barriers. And through my experience and everything, I really don't want them in my head. I want to be able to have my wits about me. I try to be careful, especially through past experience. I try to be careful in how I ask for them to interact with me. Uh,
Yeah.
there was
Yeah.
one time, there was one time at Stanley Hotel where my wife and I had gone there. We were staying a couple of nights, and we were on their haunted tour. And I was we had I'd bought some equipment and stuff for it that I'd left running in our room because we had experienced paranormal activity there too. But I had asked, or a lady had mentioned that, or had said, "Hey, did somebody just slap me in the butt?" And there wasn't anybody around her, and people were saying, "Oh, maybe you got some activity, or blah blah blah." And I was there for activity, and I didn't want to be disappointed. So by the time we got up to the fourth floor, I was I know better, but this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for me. So I was kind of provoking, and I was saying, "Well, slap me, scratch me, pull my hair, and stuff like that." But man, we got on the fourth floor, and they were showing one of the most haunted rooms there, and I was kind of joking around like I was going to knock on the door, and the tour guys. I wasn't going to knock on the door. I was just joking around about it. But the tour guy said, "No, don't do that. Somebody might be in there." So I didn't. But boy, just probably 2 3 minutes later, I started feeling really sick. And I started sweating bullets, and started feeling dizzy. And I told my wife, "Man, I gotta see if I can walk this off." I walked back down the hallway from where we came, and I started feeling a little better. Turned around and came back to the group, but man, I got within about 5 feet of where I was, and I felt even worse. Felt like every pore in my body was being ripped open and pins and needles shoved in me. And my wife says I turned faint, almost green, and I almost fell out. I fell up against the wall, and I said, "Man, I got to get out of here." And but there was an elevator just down the hallway there, and we got to the elevator, and it was really strange because as soon as my wife hit that button, that elevator opened up, and we got in there, and as soon as that elevator door shut, man, it was like a breath of fresh air. I felt completely fine after that, but my head was like scrambled. I was like, what was that? I couldn't wrap my head around it. I'd never experienced anything like that before. But then, after really running it around in my head and everything, and I really think something was, I got what I asked for and more. So
Yeah. Well, maybe
got to be
maybe you're
careful.
maybe you're just sensitive beyond what you had experienced up to that time because we do hear about these things, like you mentioned a little earlier, that these influences and feelings, and not being sure what they are when you start to experience them, or how to control them, and no one to talk to. But I believe we can be influenced in ways, and maybe that's even in my life.
Hmm.
That why I get angry at times. You may not even know that something's actually causing the effect to occur.
Yeah, and see, uh, I believe that it could be that you could be in proximity, close proximity to a spirit that is feeling them emotions or stuck in them emotions. But also, I do believe that there are dark spirits that can attach to you that can provoke these emotions and feed off them, and they can jump from one to another. They can jump from one person to another. You could pass by somebody and whatever that entity is feels like you're a better target, that you have more depression or something, some kind of negativity that they can feed off of, then they'll just quickly jump to that person too.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact, uh, I've experimented on this issue. I know for a fact that they can attach at will. My son and I were doing an investigation at a cemetery out here near Vernal, and excuse me, we had come in contact with an entity there that, with our meters and stuff and a little technique of ours, he was able to lead us right to his grave. So we knew what his name was. I can't
Hmm.
remember his last name, but his first name was Friedrich. But anyway, we come to find out there's like a cliff memorial out here. It's called Remember the Main. And I mean, this is a real high cliff, just sheer cliff. He was a jumper that jumped off there and committed suicide. And I won't go into that story. That is a very interesting story, though. But anyway, he uh, apparently he liked us and wanted to hang out with us. And when we were ready to go, we kind of said our goodbyes and everything, and told them that we were leaving them here, that nobody was to follow us. But yet, when we left there, like we always leave a couple of meters running to see if we do have an attachment.
Okay.
And we got probably a quarter mile down the road, and then all of a sudden, meter I had in my hand, or no, I was driving, and son had a meter in his hand, and it was lighting up, just pegging. And
Was it
so,
K2, or what type of meter?
yeah, it was a K2.
Okay.
But
Wow.
so uh, I pulled over and shut the car off just to make sure there was no auto interference, and it was still lighting up. And then we asked, okay, well, stop lighting up the meter for a moment so we can ask you some questions. And so the meter stopped, and we asked, is this Friedrich? And it lit up, and we said, uh, was you wanting to go home with us? Well, my son and I had talked about it because we'd been wondering, can they voluntarily attach at will? And so we decided to experiment with it. And so, bottom line is, we allowed him to go home with us for the sake of science. And when we got home, we immediately set up on the coffee room, or on the coffee table in the living room, and asked, "Are you here?" Or, "Friedrich, are you here?" And that meter just lit up. But one of the deals that we had made, when we allowed him to come home with us, but before we actually came home, was uh, that he was not to mess it. He could interact with my son and I, but he couldn't interact with my wife or the animals. Started messing with my wife or the animals, and he was out of here. So everything was fine for a couple of weeks, and then he started messing with my wife, and then with one of the animals. So we had to pretty much evict him.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. And I'm not saying that things like that can't happen. I've never experienced it, but you did mention the right thing though, and which tells me that you honestly are researching properly, and many people don't. When in the car that occurred, you stopped everything, stepped away, stepped back, made sure that there was no other interferences going on, and you had intelligent discussion, basically, you could say. And one of the other
Yeah.
things I want to say, because you bring up interesting things already, and a lot of what you're saying is, I've heard things like this, and some of these things come from bigger names that been out there doing things, and I'm not talking about TV personalities. I'm really not talking about them. I'm talking to people who take this in within a scientific manner, but
Yeah.
they say when we go that we can take our feelings over there, and so does other people, wherever this other land is that we one day will all have to face and go to, I guess. But with that, there may be, I guess, a combined law of attraction kind of working, as you said. um, Frederick Friedrich actually
Yeah.
liked you guys.
Friedrich.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
there was like what you're saying was like an actual connection, and maybe
Yeah.
people don't realize at times, that it could be a good experience. It depends on how we possibly perceive it.
How we perceive it. Yeah. How we perceive it and how we go from there. You know, if you're going to fear it, well, uh, in my experience, an entity, if you do have like a spirit, say in the house or something like that, it could even be brought in by some company that had come to visit or something and decided to stay there. But
Yeah.
in a lot of cases, if what they actually want is to somehow be able to communicate for whatever reason, but they will start small, and try to give you little notices and stuff like that. And if you ignore them, then like a child, they try something else that might get your attention and accelerate from there.
And then
But
people,
once you actually take the time and effort to I'm not even suggesting doing it yourself. I would suggest doing it with somebody that's experienced with it, but try to find out what it wants. A lot of these issues can be resolved if you just simply find out what it wants and try to resolve it that way.
yeah,
Once they at least, whether you resolve the issue or not, once they see that you have taken an interest and at least try, they will leave you alone in many cases. Not all, but in many cases.
and again, you bring up something that makes perfect sense. You're hitting the nail right on the head, really hard. A lot of people don't realize, they may hear these little trigger elements that occur, and just figure it's nothing. And maybe at that point of the beginning of what may be going on, could be that just them making to, sending quiet little signals somehow. And if they don't pay attention to it, it could turn into something to where suddenly a cup moves off a shelf, and it's a demonic haunting. It may not be that at all.
Yeah,
But how would you
yeah, they're
suggest to
perceiving it.
people? How would you suggest to people on that level to address it? Do we call immediately out for help to someone like yourself, or do we try to isolate it a little bit to understand it?
Well, I would suggest try to move forward with trying to resolve the issue rather than trying to ban it immediately. Because for one thing, not everything works for everything, or there's no one simple solution. To try to keep them out or whatever, you may end up pissing them off.
Right.
So, in the effort to try to ban them out without trying to resolve their issues, or try to find out what the issue is. And in doing that, you may too, and I don't want people to be mistaken uh, with spirits that are in need of communicating, whatever message with tricksters, because there can be tricksters.
Hmm.
Or, somebody in distress, even animals and stuff. They can be tricksters. So you got to, especially as a paranormal investigator, you got to really be careful about this. You don't know what that is. You can guess, you can assume, but do you really have any validation? So you got to keep that in the back of your mind when you're doing this, and you got to be really careful about what you're taking home with you.
Well, yeah, I agree. I agree. But let's just say, for the sake of a scenario, a created scenario that I'm about to do, you're, and I believe that these things, these supernatural events can occur. You might be out just shopping, but, and, for
Yep.
whatever reason, you walk by somebody and they are truly the one that had the attachment, but then it jumps to another person, which is you.
Yep.
And because
Yep.
for some reason it likes the way you look, or whatever, because it's so hard to
Yep.
understand what the reason behind any of it would be. But this jump does occur,
Right.
then you're saying.
Yes, and I believe so. And it could be, a good spirit, just looking for, some good energy, some happy people to be around or something. But it could also be a negative entity that's looking for somebody that's, suffering from depression. They go for just like any predator, they are predators. They prey on negative energy, and if you're stuck in depression and stuff like that, in fact, even keep that in mind. Maybe you got an attachment, a negative attachment that's trying to create, negative feelings in whatever manner.
Right.
So you really got to keep yourself, if you got to keep yourself out of that rut. Don't listen to this depressing, whining music and stuff like that. If you're stuck in depression, you need some upbeat music. You need some upbeat frequencies.
Right.
I strongly believe that frequencies can affect people immensely. Frequencies around you, and I don't know if entities can actually manipulate your frequency or what. I this is part of my investigation. I already believe, there's enough evidence, even through my own experience, that they are out there. What I want to know is, what are they?
Yeah,
I
that's the
know there's
hard
more. I
question.
really believe there's. I'm sorry, what?
That's the hard question.
Yeah,
What are they?
that's it. But yeah, what are they? But you know, I'm sure I'm not the only one that's trying to look into this. But I firmly believe that in the bigger picture, we're only seeing part of the picture, a little piece of the picture. In the bigger picture, I think a lot of this stuff is connected. Bigfoot, Dogman, like these aliens, ancient Anunnaki. I mean, there's already significant historical evidence that the Anunnaki had been here. I mean, if you research the translations of the New Testament, it comes from the Old Testament, which comes from the ancient Hebrew, which comes from ancient Arabic, which comes from ancient Sumerian. So let's go back to the source and find out where all these stories are coming from, because many of those stories are coming from ancient Sumerian. So, I mean, you go back there, if you know the Bible and you go back there, you'll realize that a lot of them stories in the Bible came from ancient Sumerian.
I, I
So
would
let's
I
go
would
back there.
agree with you. I would agree with you, but I also think across the platform of 187 countries, and I'm not saying this to disagree with you, we have to take in the insight from their writings. They all seem to have experienced so much alike everybody else, but they use different names, different titles.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Sometimes it's different times, but the events seem to occur. It's almost like it's an alien invasion implanting thought of all of the religions and all of the faculties of spiritualisms and practices of whatever people chose from back in history and ancient history to the present day now. But you're absolutely right. There's a lot of information that does give us facts, but it's up to people to research deep into that. I do. I love those topics. I mean, I've been talking about them for years, and for me, I've been just infatuated with why why are we here? Why were we
Well,
born? What It's almost like you have to ask these questions, including the one of the biggest ones, questioning your own mortality. And I mean, I think I've done that probably 100 times. Just every now and then you get that thought. It's your conscious talking to your subconscious. So when people even say, oh, there's only you're only one person, but in truth, that if that is fact, why do we question our own self within ourselves, but won't admit? Are you talking to yourself? No, I wasn't doing it. Yes, you are. No, I wasn't. But in fact, you are. We do this thing. It's almost like we are having an intelligent conversation from within our soul.
huh, yeah, yeah. I've researched the ancient Anunnaki and the stories
Okay.
of the ancient Anunnaki, the Emerald Tablets, the Numa Elish and stuff. But if like the ancient Sumerians recorded their history and pretty much their daily activities on clay tablets,
Right.
and which I like because you can't change them. And but you go back, they tell a lot of their stories are about the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki is essentially a title, just like the names given to them, like Anu, which is Lord, basically heaven, God of heaven, and Enki,
Yep.
which is
Inky, Ilnu.
En. I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, Inky, and wasn't there Ilnu?
Enlu
Enlu. Yeah,
or
there. I'm
Enlil.
sorry.
I'm sorry, Enlil. Yeah,
Yeah.
see, En means Lord, and then Ki means earth. So Enki is Lord Earth, and Lil means heaven. So it's Lord Heaven. They were two brothers, sons of Anu. Uh, the Anunnaki are basically from heaven to earth came. That Anu is considered heaven, and Ki is earth. So from Anu Ki means from heaven to earth. So essentially, the names that we are familiar with entities in history are their names were basically titles. They were named by what the meaning of the word was. There was meaning behind their word. It wasn't just George or Steve or whatever. They actually had meaning behind them, and depending on where you went in the country, they each had different. They they viewed them differently, gave them different titles. The wording wasn't the same, and it was in their language.
So
So that
everything
kind of
was
follows.
basically everything back then was basically the symbolism. If you saw a picture, it could have a different meaning depending upon how the pictures lined up.
Yeah, yeah, depending on the mentality of the people in them days. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that those tablets were fine actually by a sheep herder who lost a sheep and he went into a cave. He was watching the herd for his father and went into a cave and discovered all those tablets. But that's how good accidents are meant to happen. This is all the
Well,
things that teach us.
there's been more and more of them found.
Yeah, I
These are
can
even
imagine
flight
what they don't
logs.
show us. What don't they show
These
us?
are Yeah, some of them are even flight logs. Oh, you can see a lot of them are displayed in museums and stuff.
Oh yeah,
They
no,
even have
yeah,
translator apps that you can go through and translate it yourself according to that translator app.
right. Billy Carson talks a lot about that. The
Yeah,
different
I love
scenarios
Billy
of it
Carson.
all. Oh, I've had
Yeah,
the
Billy.
pleasure. I've had the pleasure of having a little bit of tidbits of conversations. Yeah, he's a fascinating guy. I mean, he really
He
is.
is,
And
and very knowledgeable. Very knowledgeable.
yeah, yeah. I mean, he
And
took a
a lot of
he took a
that's through
path.
experience.
Yeah, and you know, I get sent a lot of pictures of his excursions that since he's married now and that he's going on, and he goes with Jimmy Church, and they send things and post things that I get. They are really going to the looking into the deep dive of our ancestry and where it all began, or at least what within this one culture, because they love the East.
Yeah, uh, I feel that he strongly believes that he is onto something. You know, which I strongly believe too, because I was researching the Anunnaki before I came across him, and I was like, man, this guy's got a lot of the information I want. You know, him and Paul Willis or
Yeah, I
Wallace, yeah,
think it's
Paul
Wallace.
Wallace, yeah, yeah, I like them too. They're very knowledgeable in the area that I am interested in.
Well, that's really interesting on many levels. Uh, so, do you think these ancient customs and things that they did are tied into what we are dealing with of Earth's consciousness, of these dimensions, of how people are now within them, and we're experiencing some of that?
Yeah, I believe that society was kind of, in a sense, psychologically bred out of the harmonics of the earth and stuff. You know, we have turned more to materialism. I mean, as a whole, we have turned more to materialism than we have spiritualism. We have lost, you know, we're losing connection with that spiritualism. Yeah, there are some of us, but not everybody as they were. You know, it used to be most everybody was spiritual in one sense or another. But but if you go back to the stories of the Anunnaki and stuff, you come to you'll and actually follow the stories, you'll come to realize why there's such diversities in religions and stuff. The regions were divided up among the descendants, and and the people of them regions were given a DNA mark. So that's why we have Asians, we have, blacks, that helps to explain why we have that diversity there, as well as they influenced their own belief systems to put them as a god.
Yeah,
But
and
they
but don't gods represent, for the most part, in the ancient writings, one of power, one of knowledge?
Yeah, uh, well, Enlil in the Bible is the one that's more of the vengeful god, the aggressive one. The one wants
Yeah.
to. He's the one that ordered the destruction of the Tower of Babel. But it was Enki that it is said that actually created us, and he fell in love with his creation. He's the one that gave Noah the heads up to build the ark. But at the same time, well, he had swore they seen it coming. It was their, according to the stories, it was their planet of Nibiru that was coming back into our solar system. They've got an elongated orbit that comes into our solar system. We're actually in a binary solar system. But then I'm sure you'd understand that if you've been watching
Yeah.
Billy Carson. But so uh,
Well, I'm a lot older than Billy, so I've been doing this for about 55 years. But he's enlightened me. I'm never gonna. He
he,
deserves to hear that. I mean, he really
yeah,
is, fascinating to listen to. But he breaks it down
yeah,
with a different analogy. A total
well, not only that,
totally different analogy.
and he gives you, references or where he's getting his information from, and encourages you to go look it up for yourself.
Yeah, but not everybody
You know,
reads the writing the same way. That's the problem, and that's where Billy
yeah,
comes in, and other people who do lectures and come on things like this and talks about the facts of what we do know, and go into the deep dive of it all. But when we
yeah.
look into
But he,
when we look at, I'm sorry, go ahead.
well, I was going to say, and helps to introduce different perspectives, not just one.
Yeah, but it
You
also
know,
creates
it's not
a
just Billy
dissonance with
Carson.
it. But it creates a
I'm sorry.
dissonance with it too, because when you look at the books, then we have one story that is written that's ancient, and it's biblical, it's historical, and then you go into the reference of the Bible, and it tells you a different format of story. I'm not saying that they're taking everything out of it, but they have removed a lot out of it, and they want you to forget some of that history. They weren't, and I
Yeah,
think what happened was, as time was going on, certain things got away from them, and they couldn't control it all. Because I feel it's under a control mechanism. When we look at the Vatican and the fact that they were the strongest leaders of the world at one time, having the Templars rummage and having field days to bring back to the Vatican anything and everything that had to do with holiness or treasures or the creation. They actually isolated it from us and created a world process of, you know, possibly, I want to be fair to everybody because I don't want to trample on anybody's beliefs, but it was a whole different narrative. And I think a lot of people are still a little bit behind and stuck on that. Whether it's the Old Testament, New Testament, the Holy Bible, the King James Version. When we get into all of it, the elements of a lot of the facts have been extracted, and I just wonder,
yeah,
I really would wonder, hey, wouldn't you like to go for a walk with me through that 5 mile catacomb to see what's down there? I would, but you got to be somebody special. You got to be of the rich and the
yeah,
powerful to, to,
yeah,
to understand it and see it. And one of the other more fascinating things that a lot of people don't know, that the Rothschilds family, the Orsini's, true name is Orsini, but the Rothschilds actually owned the museum over there in the East. And a lot of people
I
didn't
didn't
know
know
that.
that.
So and
Yeah,
not
I
just
didn't know.
that, they were the major property tax. They were the government within the government, on the dark side of the government, running and illustrating a government to run a narrative over there for them while they were collecting everything. And if we go into some of the other facts that have occurred over there, we didn't go there for weapons of mass destruction. We went there for history and relics and Nimrod and these other things that are relate in relationship to the ancient bloodlines.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know it was more about the treasures than the resources
Well, I guess they
or
feel
anything
it's
like
all
that.
theirs. And instead of sharing, they can keep the treasures. Just tell us the truth, you know?
Well, yeah, I agree, but uh, uh, I'm leaning to that the Anunnaki, if they're still here, and I believe that there probably is, they still have influence over us because I really don't see them investing so much in us and then all of a sudden just leaving. So, and in their stories, they have left Anunnaki here to guide man, as they call it. You know, what it was to help is to continue to use man to uh, to work their resources, and I believe they're still doing that. But
Yeah.
uh, the but I think like after the flood, from what I understand, before the flood there was like a canopy. You've never really seen uh, the sun like we do now, or the stars. I'd never really seen. You could never really see the stars from 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 here on the ground. But after the Great Flood, when the heavens opened up and everything like that, after that was when they started seeing the blue skies and all that. But I'm kind of wondering if maybe that extra exposure to the rays of the sun were possibly too harsh for them, so they
Hmm.
had to kind of retreat to a kind of backstep into basically a veil area. They gave control over man, but they gave control over man to man, but they are controlling that man.
Yeah, and they may
If
never
that
have
makes sense.
really, my thought, have left us. But even if we go back to the ancient texts, we're now finding things that date back 250,000 years So it almost says it with certainty in many ways, if we're not being lied to by any of it as a measure of propaganda, that possibly, they weren't the first civilization to come here to search for that gold and, do whatever they did with our DNAs and created man in certain ways. Maybe they created another man, a Hamid, and not Homo sapien sapien. But that's where Gilgamesh comes in. That's where the Nephilim come in. That's where the Raphaelim come in. That's where the fallen angels come in. And if you're wiping the earth clear and clean from this corruption and evil, because it was based upon as evilness, if we follow that, um, maybe that's why that all started. Maybe that's why we experience it all. That they are trying to break through this veil. Some say they're buried within the lake, under a lake, right here on this planet, somewhere hidden. And one day they will find their way out and they will take their kingdom back, just as you're explaining with Nebru, the theory of Planet X and so forth. But then we also have theories of AI technology that we got out of hand by us. And that's the major problem. It's not anybody, one civilization coming back. It's a problem of technology that's going to destroy our planet before 2030 because there's an agenda of some sort in place that nobody's talking enough about. And I don't want to go into it because it starts to knock on the door of a political narrative. And I want to keep completely from that and just, focus upon, the topic and subject matter that you brought up on it. But here's something of crazy fact and theory, though. Whatever happened, it had to do with water because we know scientifically the water sources showed proof of heightened levels of water in mountains and everywhere else. And the fact that the earth can tilt, has tilted, and in the northeast of the Americas, we even once upon a time had palm trees here. And I wonder if it was just the tilt that had occurred and the water rushed in that seemed to be of a level that lasted 40 days, 40 nights, but never resubmerged back out to where its origin originally was. The cities all sunk. We lost all these civilizations. I think it's just, I think many cultures have tried to explain to us the theory of what took place, of what happened, but how will we ever know, especially when we hear and we learn the teachings from the holy books that say the earth was wiped clean of all this. But if that was factually true, they may have wiped out the Nephilim, but then the Raphaelim, the giants, then took over once again, and the civilization started to live, which means not everybody was affected by a worldwide devastation.
Yeah, I I have heard stories where there were actually some survivors, but the Bible is about the bloodline of Adam. If they were the bloodline of Cain or something like that, then they're probably not going to be included so much in the Bible. But see, they were experimenting. You've heard of the Centaurians and the Minotaur, and they even talk about how they created a dog man and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think the Egyptians give the best examples of what possibly did occur. But then you have the Dogon tribe that claims they were influenced by a lizard-like man type person. The Dogon tribes, it's within all their pottery as well. Their pottery all represents it. When you find their ancient potteries, it's all about the reptilian, or let's say subject matter like that. So it puts us into a really big circle, a kind of a network of a swing where this is fascinating to talk about, but to try to get to the point and get to the meat and potatoes of it all is the difficult part. And I also think, and I also think that the Bible, and I don't want to say this to be rude, but because of what I can pull out behind me that's this thick in my homework, is the fact that names were changed into a criteria to use that for a different purpose. And that's where religion started to come in. When you look at the books of Revelation, it was written 500 years before the Christianity ever started. Before it ever started, it was 500 years before. We do have proof and fact to that. And I even think Billy made mention to something on it that people should research into him, because let's face it, he's a scholar, he's educated in this. I'm just a theorist, a conspiracy guy who has a fascination. I don't study it like they do, but I do know enough to want to keep asking the proper questions to get to the proper answers.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm all about connecting the dots, and I really enjoy connecting with people that are doing that same thing too, because you're connecting pieces of puzzles over here, I'm connecting pieces of puzzles over here. If we can connect all this together and then discuss it and maybe enlighten each other as to what we're seeing, then maybe we can get a whole lot further.
Right, I agree. And this here's the sad part for me. And I literally have hundreds of shows. This is a topic that nobody will come on a platform. You're probably one of the very first. I've had some deep dive conversations with a few people, but nobody talks about this, subject matter. And I use that term because I want to stay on the fence to give everybody respect and hope that they stay to listen to what's going on. Like, share, follow Steve Ghostman. Very intelligent. He's bringing up all the hard topics that people don't know, but it's true. Where are our origins? Where do we come from? Why are we here? How do we get to the bottom of it? Because we have to fight tooth and nail to get every answer that we need. And we have to rely on the educational system. But the part of the educational system that taught people who don't freelance enough, like Billy does, Jimmy Church, a few other scholars that were out there, Stanton Friedman, Linda Moulton Howe, Davey Icke. I mean, these are people that
that are hands-on.
Yes, they deep it. They go there. They look into it. My life has never allowed me to be able to do that. But we rely.
I would love to do that.
Oh my God, yeah, I would. I mean, without a doubt. I mean, I think it's my calling. I don't know what my calling is. There's such a big platform of things that I talk about because I take life as part of a mystical tour of fascination. And I'm just trying to understand what it all is. And I know my bucket list is huge. I'm never going to reach in and start removing anything. So here I sit and I talk about this. But you know what? Guys like you are hard to come by with the knowledge that can step forward into the ring. So I welcome you anytime to come talk to me about any of the subject matter you would love to, because this just fascinates me. And, Facebook doesn't give you enough of anything when it comes to podcast subject matters. But tonight we're having a steady amount of people coming through, staying in, listening, because I think people do want to know the answers to the unknown, to what we should know that we've never been taught.
Yeah, don't stop asking. Don't stop, inquiring. I really recommend, don't take my word for it. Don't take, your word for it. We're just trying to spark that interest. Do your own research when possible,
Yeah.
You may be able to find answers that we're not able to give you, but at the same time, you've got to keep an open mind. Do not go in there with any biased type of perception or something like that. When you find evidence that may contradict the Bibles or something like that, don't, you got to take that, just keep that on the plate, and see if maybe down further on the line, if, you find something that'll knock it off or something that'll add to it.
Yeah.
To help validate, its truth and everything.
Yeah. One of the other things of the big what if was that we have these fault lines. And one of the other topics that I ran into where I had discussions was these fault lines can cause havoc, and they run under the ocean. And if they were to crack or open up or push up from the earth underneath due to volcanic activity, something that we don't see, that also could have pushed these water levels up. I'm just bringing
Yeah.
up fact of
Well,
theory, what people don't talk enough about. But I have been on other shows with people and have had some of these discussions. And I would love if it could ever happen, if we ever tilted somehow in a safe manner, and those waters all receded in a different direction. I'd be down walking that beach and going out as far as I could. Because could you imagine how much we don't
yeah.
know that is laying under
Yeah.
there? And the government always has their hands in it. Don't touch it unless we give you authorization. It's like we have to have a permission slip for everything when it comes to history. I mean, we really
Yeah. And they
do.
get their hands on it.
And
They
it
get
always
their
belongs to
hands on it.
somebody else, even if they stole it.
Well, see, I believe that well, like the stories of Planet X passing through our solar system. Now, according to
Hmm.
the stories, that's what caused the Great Flood. They could not have stopped that. Even if they had wanted to, that was their planet. It was the gravitational pull that was of their planet coming through our solar system that caused the Great Flood. All they could do is it, but they did have a choice. Did they want to save mankind, or did they just want to wipe it out? And Lil wanted to wipe out mankind, but it was
Yes.
Enki that saved mankind. Okay, but so some of these deities that they deem as monotheistic God in the Bible, it's not a monotheistic God. It's about several different entities, and even some of their bloodlines, like Marduk was the son of Enki, and he's
Right.
also known as Amun Ra. Amun Ra made it a, a law that you had to end prayers in his name. Amen. That's
And
where
people are sadly
the prayer.
mistaken about where that came from. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and see that's according to Billy Carson. That's where I heard that from. And
Okay.
so, I mean,
Yeah,
he
but it's
plays a lot.
factual. Everything that I learned 30 years ago bring the same theory of that terminology used of amen. It's like what meaning amen, whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
there was
Well,
two theories, whatever, and amen was paying homage.
yeah, yeah. But that definition came later.
Well, they've been all over. We'll say there's a few. I'm never going to disagree with the guest in a bad way. I mean, this is how we learn. This is the
Well,
greatness of
no,
it.
what? Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, all I can do is give my perspective on it,
Great. And no,
and
I'm with you. I'm with you. To me, I'm learning right now. This is what gravitates. It gets my mental psyche up. I love it. But again, when you take all this into hand from whatever what creation was or who did it, we are here. You brought up something though that I'd like to reflect back on, and I didn't even write it down in a note, but how we are all of different cultures. But if we are all of different cultures, we are different, but we are all from one. In some way, one substance. Something started us. The only way we understand life to begin is through man and woman. And that evidently had taken place and had a repetitious type of uh, growth for people and humanity. People learned what birth was and creation was, and everything on this planet is able to reproduce. I mean, trees drop seeds. They have young
yeah,
trees next to them. They fell from them because
even
be,
viruses.
yeah, it's everything. It's every bug. It's
Yeah,
every
there's some way to
person.
reproduce.
Right.
Yeah,
And we all have a different structure of look. And I wonder when it comes down to some of the things that have gotten away through history, if these cryptids were somehow of creation, then they probably went through evolutionary changes as we did.
yeah.
If we all
Oh
came
yeah,
from one culture, but some of us turned out white, some of us turned out brown, yellow, red, black, whatever the scenario is, we are who we are from where we're born within. But that doesn't mean that we're not part of that evolutionary change of where we came from, our family roots, whatever they are, wherever they started, to where we are at this point. And I wonder, as we learned, and when they explained the dinosaurs, well, you had these ones that got the really long necks because they had to eat at the highest points of the trees, and the giraffes did the same things. Um, Evolutionary changes. They weren't like that, but they grew into like that. And it makes me wonder if
Yeah.
that's part of the mythical thing of what we don't understand about what we are experiencing out in this outer unknown uh,
Well,
dimension or significant other parallel thing that exists with us.
yeah, and well, like the Anunnaki, okay. According to something I had researched on them, they were like kind of a reptilian species, but they had the ability to alter their looks. But it was part of their DNA that was spliced with the hominid species here on Earth. I mean, they tell of this. They tried several times, and they tell about their failures and everything like that in the stories of the Anunnaki. But
Yeah.
they, uh, where was I going with it? Uh,
Well, I was
anyway,
going to
oh
bring
yeah, the
something up while
reptilian.
you're it, did you collect
Well,
your thought?
but, but supposedly the human DNA does have reptilian DNA in it. So I mean, they've proven this. So it kind of gives some weight to some of the stories that at least some of, if not, well, I don't think all of them, but I think some of the Anunnaki at least were of a reptilian species. And
Have you
if
ever
that
have
be
you
the
ever
case,
yeah, have you ever heard the Ron Wyatt story?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Have you ever heard the Ron Wyatt story?
It sounds familiar.
Well, he was a man who like claimed that he could talk to a species, angels, something. And they helped him through prayer and through consciousness and meditations. And this guy could go out and find almost anything of holiness and ancient relic. I mean, truly, he would walk into the ocean and just pull out old artifacts. Well, one of the things that he claimed that he found and that he did actually lectured on before his passing was finding the Holy Grail, basically. And with that, he found blood. And when the blood was tested, and it was found in a stage like it was something that ran down from the upper ground into this cavern cave where he found this item. Um, he thought it was blood, and he thought, well, I should get it checked, and he did. And he claims that the people that examined it and tested the blood, it only came back with 24 chromosomes, which mean it came from one, not from two, having a mother but not a father. So we
Well,
see
yeah,
elements that we see and hear things like that where this happens. Also in the cryptid world, in a way, it's like we're finding things out there. There is a mother, a human mother, but we don't know how to identify the father. And maybe that's where these experimental creations were going on, because I think it was even Inky that said he could transfer himself into any vessel and walk among people and they would never know who he was. So they were transferring consciousness into vessels like yours and mine that they could
yeah,
grow. It's almost like they were cloning back then.
Thoth as well talks about that. There was a chamber, like a rejuvenation chamber, that they would walk in one body for so long, and then they go into this rejuvenation chamber, halls of Amendes. Yeah,
Yeah.
but they go into these rejuvenation chambers and basically switch consciousness to another body, and to where they could still walk among man while that previous body was rejuvenating. They would change out like every 100 years or something like that. Now this too is according to Billy Carson.
Okay. Well, I
So
mean, I'll throw one into the Pandora's box here with you on that. While in the pyramids, the one pyramid that was being looked at and observed showed signs of frequency or power within it, like as it was an energy bed of some sort. And I think that's where part of the narrative of the information comes from. That back then, even back then, now whether they were using that or just using it to stay healthy and energized because they understood things in a way that we don't understand about the quantum effects and all this, the possibilities of everything, because we don't see it as material. It doesn't mean it's not matter existing because it's naked to our eye and we don't visualize it. It's translucent to us. We see through it, but only because maybe
we don't
that's our
the light frequency.
Right. So maybe it's only because we're not having the full effect of the perception of the information. And that's where science comes in. But the part of the science that scares me is it's a control mechanism. You can have the best people in the world, and I'm going to bring something up I don't want to bring up, because you have everybody fighting over climate right now, and you have the best scientists in the world saying you're not measuring it right. They drilled sample cores. They go down for 1,000 years to look at the layers, and they observe all the content of everything that ever happened. And they say we're just in a place where we've been before, and we'll come out of it, and we will again start to normalize, or maybe we are actually in a normalized place. But when it's controlled by a message that could be, and I'm trying to stay away from the big P word tonight, but when it's controlled by a political opponent because it becomes unnecessary, then you're going to have scientists, because they're paid through government grants, say what the other one wants them to say. We saw the same thing happen with ancient discoveries happening in Jerusalem and Israel and Iraq, when it was under a different leadership of that was being led through the museums and whatnot. And I'm not going to bring up his name because he's affiliated with a certain, again, it gets into politics. That's why they closed the pyramids down. You weren't even allowed to walk in. They said it was going to crumble and fall apart. I mean, they come up with all these things, but that never happened, that seem to keep distance between us and the reality manipulated.
Yeah.
It's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, I believe highly in our reality is based on frequencies, light frequencies, sound frequencies, and whatnot. And back in ancient times, they were more in tune with these things. So I had that could it's they're finding out now that you can use harmonics to move in ancient times they were using harmonics to be able to lift heavy objects.
Yeah, sound frequencies.
Now I don't know if that has to be in an actual controlled environment or if they could just do it out in the open. It seems like maybe in a more controlled environment, but as far as lifting all the heavy stones and everything to build the pyramids, well, they do talk about having giants, and some of them were heroes and stuff like that. So, I mean, depending on the giant, they could probably just pick it up, under his arm and one on his shoulder, and off he goes.
Yeah. I mean, when we hear about the incredible sizes that some of these men could have possibly grown to, it's almost like unimaginable that it could be possible. But we weren't here to understand what. Go ahead, bro.
Well, I was just going to say, if you put that into the equation, though, it seems more plausible as to how they could have built the pyramids.
Well, and if they actually did build them, because many cultures built over or refurbished what was already there. We find that out if you go back to Göbekli Tepe, um, 3 civilizations built over the original foundation. How do I know that? Well, because I've been taught it by some of the best, because I research. And when you look at their techniques, you see the original format of the foundation, and then you see every level of the techniques change, which means a new civilization, a new building, a new structure. I mean, possibly, or possibly due to the environment, they had to go to, or in devastation.
Or material built.
Yeah, they had to look for a different type. So, you got to throw these things into the equation as well. What are your thoughts on it? Do you really think that they built them? Because there's a bunch of narratives out there because of the waters that flow underneath that it was built. It was built also. Another theory was, when it comes to the Great Pyramid, that they used water to elevate the stones and then they pushed them off. So they were pumping water into the pyramid. They made it like a swimming pool. And that's why there's all these chambers for drainage that go through it, that go back down to the river. So they created a pumping station and they pumped all these blocks into place. I mean, that's just another theory. What is your observation of theory on it?
Yeah, I could certainly see that. But according to Billy Carson, the pyramids were built before the Egyptians were even there.
Yeah, they weren't the first culture there.
No, and same with the Aztecs and stuff. The pyramids were. They're finding out now that the pyramids are much older than the Aztecs were, much older, and even most of them sites where pyramids been built, or they find these holy temples and stuff. They have actually been built upon temples that possibly that had of a civilization that had been conquered.
I mean,
the back in ancient times when they when they built, they didn't just randomly build or find places to build temples and stuff like that. They were more in tune with the ley lines of the earth, natural ley lines of the earth, and they would build the temples on the cross points of them. They believed that to be kind of a portal, which I don't know, maybe it could.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard some of that theory being discussed amongst people. Our indigenous describe those areas as a circle swirl, and that identifies the highest electromagnetic source or possibly portal. I don't know if we'll ever totally understand it. But now with the fascination of ground penetrating radar and LIDAR, we're finding stuff everywhere. We haven't got in when it comes to the East. We haven't got over. I don't think we've dug more than 4% of what we understand is actually there, of what is now being recorded and found, but we don't have anybody to dig it up. No, I mean, we're over there. It seems like it's more important to have the WAR than it is for us to get over there and say, hey, we're all brothers. We all bleed red. Let's dig this up and see who the hell we are, and let's cook cows and have steak and, but we're not on that same thing. I want to bring something up to you. May fascinate you. May know about this. In Alaska, in an area now that we the government, the military, they know every tree, they know every shrub, they look at everything. But there's a place in Alaska. There's a show on TV. I'm trying to remember. They do gold. They try to find gold in the water up there. I can't remember what the hell they call that little town.
Gold.
No, but there's a specific place, so I can get you in the directional of the area. Nome, Alaska. 50 miles from Nome, Alaska. There's a place on the military maps that's whited out, says never surveyed. And if you go anywhere near it, there's a fence up. What has now come down through the line through Linda Moulton Howe is there is what is known as a black pyramid there, but I've heard it from other sources. Linda did a really good take on it, a really good delivery presentation. This is the largest pyramid that we know that exists on Earth, and it's just not a pyramid; it's a black pyramid. So, is it made of basalts? I guess it's possible. That was a theory that was laid out because of the Keller. It's underground, 150 feet, and it is 100 feet taller than the Great Pyramid. And so, um, and one step further in the reveal, the whistleblowers from the military that came through with this information says it's a self-generating power plant. I mean, when you hear things like this, how can you not be like blown off the wall saying, what is, this earth is so impressive and fascinating, but more fascinating, who was here? Who were these people? Why were they here? And I think it takes us into a whole different element. But so, did you know anything about this place and that Black Pyramid?
Well, I've heard about it. I haven't really gone in researching into depth about it. But yeah, they're saying that all the pyramids were essentially pretty much like what Tesla was onto. They could use the atmospheric energy to and be able to concentrate it, presumably in an upward direction. But
Which talks about teleportation. He utilized that
yeah,
theory in
yeah,
teleportation, the Philadelphia experiment, Montauk, um, crystals, of how they could step into the fabric. And it's not that you're stepping into a fabric. Man, this is really funny that, I'm going into this right now because I've something that I'm working on for myself. I work on things that I never release. Truthfully, I do. And I'm working on it right
yeah,
now.
same here.
And I mean, I joke not. If I walk by right behind me here, I got a stack so thick and high. But they were working on something called, I think in my mind, that's known as a chromics, maybe chromics. I could have that wrong. I'll correct myself at another show, another presentation, another time, because I would like to talk to somebody on the show about this. But how it was working was when they energized this field through the crystal, it was actually showing us that Earth was technology, and you could see it. It was like you could see fragments of things that like were like past, present, and no one knows exactly on the future. But and that's where we know that these projects came into place. But again, I don't want to deep dive it. It's too long. It would take too much of an explanation. But if you want to hang with me one night and I could just go over it, narrate it with you, and you could absorb it and have conversation with me, I would gladly, say, hey, come on, hang out. But it takes us
Yeah,
into these
yeah,
places of energy and everything that you're supporting, frequency, light. It's important. And they do have a way to see this fabric of, here's the thing. When you use your cell phone, where does the information go? It becomes part of
right.
everything. So
Yeah,
does the past. So does our life. So does, because we are energy. And it seems to somehow simulate in there, out there, but right next to us somehow. And that's what the military was working on and had Tesla working on. And
yeah,
that's when they got with people what they call the contractors, the untouchables. If we contract it out, they don't have to answer questions to anybody. If we do it under our own
yeah,
roof,
yeah,
we have to answer to the public. So they would,
yeah,
they would collect and gather the best in the fields to do everything. The same on crash retrievals with Lieutenant Corso going around handing out fabrics of pieces of ships and technology and all these different things that they were reverse engineering. At least if factually true. But I don't think the guy from the military wrote 3 books on everything he did in his life and got called out as a whistleblower by the military if it wasn't true. So, that's how some of the facts compile. But that's what they do. And they have all these secret projects that they do that it's because they DARPA is the one in charge of figuring out what all these components consist of. They are the ones, even the ones like when we go on Facebook and you post something like, I'm going to kick your AZZZ. You're kidding around. It's your own brother. When I see you, I'm going to kick you in your butt. Okay. Basically, if you say that and use the ass term, you know, you can go into Facebook jail for 3 days because A&I doesn't understand it. They just observe it as a threat.
Yeah, they observe the word, not the context, the
Exactly.
content.
And that's the failure to that subject. But that's also what has, and how deep and how long AI has existed within the fabric of what they have discovered, what they have been able to tap into. Do you ever remember hearing about the ancient, not ancient, but pictures where people were in these pictures that didn't blend in the picture, and people say they were cropped into place, they were placed there, they were put there, but yet when all the photography was examined, they said there was no way to make this, and we didn't have the technology to create it or see it in a different way of normal observations. So were they actually going to places through something, through the magic door project that they created, and sending people through them, which we know were many children. They were sending children because they were of higher frequency. The adrenochrome was of a much higher plateau, and that's another narrative of why I think we hear that term used in negative manners. But it's factually true that they were doing this. And again, if you go on to old Art Bell, some of his shows that were shut down in the middle of the airings before they ever started shutting us down, um, these are the type of topics that Art would have on with guests that were people coming out years ago that were in a time when he still had them to get them. Now they're all gone. You and I couldn't call them and say, "Hey, would you be what?" They're gone. They're gone. That, you know, their life is over. So you go back and you listen to
Yeah,
these people, and the information's incredible. It's incredible what people know.
yeah, yeah. If people will come together as a whole, it's amazing what we could accomplish. That uh, I I really do believe that, like in frequencies and stuff, like our perception of light frequencies are only 1% of the actual light frequency range. Some of the things that we could probably see if our spectrum was even broadened a little bit, we could probably see things that uh, I think government has it probably has the technology to actually you know, uh, cloak to our visual spectrum and everything like that.
Including
But
with paint.
uh, I'm sorry, what?
Including with paint.
Yeah, yeah,
On the
including with
bottom of
paint.
a plane, they're using cloaking paints now. They developed a way to
Oh, like
simulate.
paint. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, paint.
Yeah,
P A
yeah,
I
yeah,
N T.
yeah, yeah,
So you
yeah.
hear it, but you don't
They're
see it.
getting. Yeah, yeah. You could run into it and not even wonder what the hell you ran into.
Exactly.
Yeah, the with the technology that they have nowadays, and see, like I used to work for an aerospace manufacturing company, but they also had an ad tech division that that where they worked on parts for the like Minuteman missiles and Tomahawk missiles and even the space shuttle. But but for the most part, when they contract a lot of this stuff out, they don't contract the whole thing out to one place. They contract a little bit here, a little bit over here, and whatnot. And generally, you don't know what it goes to. Just that this is what you're doing.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. That's
So
part of how it's all hidden, right?
yeah, they contract that out, and then they don't have to tell anybody what it's for.
Yeah, that's mind
They just
blowing.
contract it out. All we need you to do is make this circuit board. All we need you to do is make these nuts, bolts, and rivets. We ain't telling you what they're for. You know, we made we did make parts for the space shuttle and stuff. I had top security there. I had keys to go everywhere. I could go into the laser research area without authorization if I felt the need to, but I had to be escorted with a security guard. But But other than that, and the president's office and the vice president's office, I had keys to go anywhere. I was a journeyman electrician, senior electrician, and so I was on call in case they had any issues or whatever. I had keys to get into everything pretty much.
So you got to
But
reset the breakers, huh?
yeah, yeah.
I'm just joking. I
So
know it's more than that. I know it's much more than that. It gets deep. I get that. I mean,
well, I mean that was a quick terminology though. I mean it was a good quick enough. You know, if
yeah.
something goes wrong, I got to be there to deal with
Oh yeah, they
it.
always
So
need somebody on hand, and companies can't exist off not making money. So where was the meat and potatoes and the gravy? And these outside contractors that they used, and you were right. I mean, they put a piece here, a piece there. What does it all go to? No one really knows. But in some cases, there is only one place that gets to build it. Now, I mean, we can speculate. You know, where
to
was it?
assemble the
Right.
whole thing.
Yeah, who was assembling it, right,
Yeah.
Pat? I mean, where did it go? Was it at Westinghouse? We don't know who these other entities were. That's the most suppressed information. Well, some say it was Area 4, 51 S4, you know,
Yeah.
who knows, truthfully, who knows? But we do know, when you're
Yeah.
speaking of cloaking too, that they talk about opening up the side of mountains and having giant doors of with entrances to where they can test flight out of them with our technologies. And it makes me wonder too, when you look at when they say we're not sure whose they are, that could be maybe what if it's just a big lie, and they know whose they are. I'm not saying we're not being visited for some reason, but maybe they are from this planet. I mean, I theorize around that because if you look at the Perry Reese map that dated in, I think, the 1500s, didn't show any ice under the Antarctic at all. And we do know that there's a secured boundary
Yeah.
around everything, and you cannot go past it. Never go past it. Why don't they show us what's past it? They never will. They say there's nothing there. The ball is a circle, and I'm not, a total flat earther by any means, but I don't care what gravity says. If you have an immense amount of water and you tilt it all one way, you may only have water on the bottom. I don't know. It just seems to me the water goes to the bottom of the bowl. It doesn't,
Yeah.
there's a lot of questions. That's all I'm saying. A lot of questions.
Well, you've heard you've heard the story of Admiral Byrd's journal,
Oh yeah, yeah, and his
where he
son's
claimed,
story as well.
yeah, well, his official story and then his personal journal that his son released upon the death of Admiral Byrd.
Well, we're not sure that
But
that's actually the actual release. That's the problem I have with it, because on his way to do it, his son died. A lot of
huh,
people don't know that. And I'm just wondering if this was another, you know, thing of
yeah,
occurrence, and they placed something there to match a narrative, but not actually focus on the facts of the truth. Because yeah, but I tell you what, if you want to talk about it, go ahead. I mean, I know what went on. I know why we went there. I know we got our butts kicked. I think we got our butts kicked in World War II. And I think that's how paperclip and everything came into place as well. Um, you know, why were we bringing scientists to NASA from Germany? Because they were way ahead of us. And why in the
yeah, they were.
1930s did a breakaway civilization meet to go to New Swaben?
Well, not only that, our country is a high tech technological country. So was Germany, but
Oh, we were way
we weren't
behind
necessarily
Germany.
on the same page.
I
Well,
think
yeah, but we were highly technical technology ah, technologically advanced. Sorry, my tongue's
I
twisted.
do the same
Anyway,
shit. Don't worry
we were
about it.
high technology countries, but uh, but then I mean, even if they gained if they had won and gained, even though we have lesser technology, what the technology that we do have added to theirs would be immense. So yeah, you you get someone greater in technology, even though we were high advanced in technology, but they were too in other aspects. We were in certain aspects, they were in other aspects. But but they were also operating with less of a public publicly moral standard than we were, because Hitler didn't care, pretty much.
Well,
So
I mean, yeah, you're right. I'm not gonna see this is where though we're on that line of where the big P comes in, the political agenda, because um, we have presidents who were actually a bloodline to Hitler in this country.
yeah,
Barry Obama, Hitler's granddaughter, was his mother,
yeah.
and
Oh,
then
really? I didn't.
yeah. So this is what I'm
She
saying
was
to you.
prime minister. She was prime minister of, or one of Hitler's descendants, granddaughter or something. I think was prime minister of Germany, just
There's so
very recently.
much. Yeah, but there's so, and again, not going to that side of things that we do know when we go into the deep dive research and you pull from history, you extract from history, it tells a story of a different fabric, I know we
And it's
started
about
out
the
with go,
bloodlines.
yeah. Well,
And you'll
and then
find
you
out
have,
it's about the bloodlines.
yeah, yeah. It does come down to that, and I think what we see is the agenda of the marital as well as the directional bloodlines of everybody infiltrating within the power of political leadership seats, so to speak. And again, I didn't want to go there, but that's part of
Well,
what we see, and I've learned.
well, and a good way to get us kind of back on track too is they, I mean, and it kind of aligns with some of the stories of the Anunnaki and possibly uh, a reptilian bloodline or something to that effect. But but the bloodlines come. They want to keep the bloodline coming. It comes from like an extraterrestrial or something to that effect. A bloodline that has more of an extraterrestrial, like the Anunnaki bloodline, being preserved. But but all but if you look back far enough, most of the leaders of the world, their bloodlines are interconnected in some manner.
Yeah, and all the presidents too came from the same tree.
Except one president, I think.
Yeah,
I can't remember who
exactly.
it was.
Well, Trump wasn't one of them, so there's the other side of that. But yeah,
Okay, the
there
chart
were,
I seen it, the chart
yeah,
I had seen, it did have Trump on there. But like
right.
any bloodline, any of your relatives, stuff like that, you can have different points of view and want to build things differently.
Yeah, I think maybe that's what
So
we're experiencing right now too. Not in many ways, but how do we redirect? Let me see here. Yeah, we're already almost on our 90-minute segment. We're almost at the end of it. I'm hoping everybody enjoyed some of this because we didn't. You know what? We didn't even break the ice on it though. We
yeah,
didn't even break the ice on so much.
well, like I've told you, I love talking about paranormal and such, and I do follow
Yeah.
politics, although I realize that ain't what this is.
No, I'm not. I
But
didn't want to make it in that direction in any way, and I really think I did a good job. I'm going to pat myself on my
yep,
shoulder because I
yeah,
really
I
want to
think you
bring
did.
the other topic matter into place and perspective to for us to understand. So, I mean, when we really look at everything, we have some factual proofs, and there's even biblical content that I can't remember the what whose name it was, but I know it's in my head that somebody of ancient royalty had his own friend who he said, even in the biblical book, that he was a hairy man and he made friends
Oh,
with
yeah,
it. And they
yep,
were buddies, compadres. I mean, you hear that. And then you've got,
yep,
3,000-year-old bones that were found in a cave somewhere, what, in China, Gigantopithecus, whatever they call him.
Oh yeah,
We have
yeah,
we have these structures of things. Where do we focus the best scenario of the possibility when we look at a dogman? Egypt. I mean, in ways maybe, because we see their figures, their statues, representations of different types of life. And in many ways, people are actually having sightings of some of these objects, of these beings. Are they seeing them supernaturally, or are they creating them through thought and manifestation? I don't know, but we're in that realm, and it seems like Earth really has a lot to do with it. I'm just saying, from my perspective, I know that there's a lot of information out there, and I know life has been everywhere, and it's been such a fantastic thing to learn all these things. But I think what people aren't looking is that Earth itself has its own life source of consciousness, and it's storing it like it has some
yeah, yep,
major component of importance. And I think we should never take that off or out of the equation to what we talk about. But I'm going to finish that narrative that I'm working on. I'll run it by you. Maybe you'll want to, do a little research yourself and come back, and we can have a great conversation on it at some point in the future, because it's not ready, but it will be ready. Because I just like doing
okay,
that stuff. I really do.
yeah, yeah. I love talking about this stuff, but yeah,
I
like
think
I
that's what the
say,
world wants to hear
the
right now.
yeah, like I say,
I just
the stories of the ancient Anunnaki and stuff. They hybrided animals and everything. Who's to say that there still wasn't some that managed to survive? And now they have evolved, like you had said.
okay.
I
Well, we could
see.
we
That's
could
one of
all
the things.
no. Go ahead, please finish.
One of Well, what that's one of my mindsets of researching. I don't want to find just the possibility. I want to find the plausibility. I mean,
Hmm.
like, is it plausible that something like Bigfoot could exist? Is it plausible that something like Dogman can exist and these cryptoids and stuff? Due to the fact that the hands-on evidence is so hard to get a hold of, let's at least find out if it's plausible, not just possible, but plausible.
Yeah. Yeah, we gotta look at the whole perspective of everything. I agree. That's very, very
Yeah.
important as to getting the answers. But there, maybe you could follow me here in our final couple minutes here, just for a quick second. 35 years
Okay.
ago, we cloned a sheep. We proved it could be done.
Yep.
Lucy, it happened. It was a worldwide announcement. Um, Little Bush, the president, Papa Bush's son, second Bush president, was fighting to keep the tampering of DNA out of the public's eye, saying it would never happen. But yet we see programs below level 7 that through DARPA that were actually doing experimentation. China has successfully created a woolly mammoth, and they're going to be placing them in Siberia. So they used an African, like one of the largest species elephants over there, and took old DNA, but good DNA from Siberia, where the woolly mammoths were under the ice buried, and they improvised them. You do what they do, whatever the cocktail they make to make it. And we're going to have those now. They are actually creating a Jurassic Park. And if you look on TikTok, I know people are saying, will probably say that's robotic, it's this, it's that. You might be sorry you said that, because there's some things going on out there that they have made public announcements on that factually back up what you're saying. Exactly what
Yeah.
you were saying is actually what is going on. So how do we
Well,
prove it? It's pretty hard until they open the park, right?
we have a history of hybriding animals. I mean, for domesticating purposes or
Right.
for whatever reason. I mean, look at all the sporting fish and everything that have been hybrided. Look where the mule came from. There is now what they call spider goats that have like spider webbing in their milk. There we have evidence of hybriding throughout history. That's how we came up with domesticated animals, is through hybriding.
Right. What about the police armor? Spiders. They created large spiders to get these webs so they could create this armor to protect police from being shot. But people, when you talk about this level of what is being developed, unless you can really point directly at a fact that makes people understand the level of intensity to deliver believability, they won't. So we can only do the best we can do. Oh man, I had a really wonderful time with you there, Ghostman. I really have. Stephen Ghostman, everybody. Stephen Ghostman. What a great time this was this evening.
You.
And I
I'll
you
try
as
to get
well.
back with you another time.
I really would appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Hey, and I'm not throwing you off. Do you want to tell anybody if they want to get a hold of you, where they can find you? Do you have a web page developed yet, or?
Well, I've got a Facebook paranormal support group. It's abbreviations of RIP. Well, I mean,
RIP.
Capital RIP, abbreviations, research and investigations of paranormal.
I like that. Rest in peace, research.
Support group, place where people can talk about it.
Yeah, there you go. That's great. I hope it's doing well.
And we'll try to find answers for each other. And
yeah.
You
promise you'll be back, group. Right?
I can try to send. Oh yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I'd enjoy coming back.
Great. I appreciate that. I really do. So rest in peace, research. And you can find Steve. You can friend him on Facebook as well. Steve Ghostman, Ghostman. What a fantastic guest. I enjoyed this evening. Thank you, my brother. I really do appreciate it. Everybody out there, thanks for hanging in there, man. It's an impressive show when you can keep high numbers from the beginning to the end. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Go ahead, bro.
Thank you. All right. Take care, people.
All right. Well, that was fascinating. It was weak. It was weak. It wasn't the best. When you don't know where you're going, you're coming in as two friends just going to talk. And this kind of happens where you start off talking about ghosts and turns up with the Anunnaki and the giants and the cryptids and lizard people and the reptilians and technology and pyramids. And I mean, wow. I mean, massive amounts of information. And I think everybody out there really has this intuitiveness to want to learn more and understand more. That's who Michael Anthony really is. I love doing what I can. I fight for the children. I fight for you through friendship. You know where we are and what we're going through. But this is a breakaway for me. This is like, outstanding stuff. And I do really thank every one of you. Ernie, you made it in. Thank you, brother. Virginia, thank you. Let me just go through. It was such a intense conversation. And sorry about us cutting each other off. That sometimes happens, and not that anybody means it. Susan Haddix, thank you. Johnny Six Gun, Danny, how are you? Lena, nice to see you in. Thank you for joining us. And if you want, you can also join in and follow the page that I do. Paranormal, Cryptids, you know. So just friend me and I could send you any information you want or have somebody else do it for you. American Crisis, I did that show last night with a rock star of a person. He's such a sweetheart of a man. He really, really is. So if you caught American Crisis, thank you for doing that. Give it a thumbs up. Give this a thumbs up. Like and share it. It doesn't make me any money. I don't do this for money or profit. No monetary gains. I don't. I just love the people that surround me when I get into these topics, and I miss doing them. I'll do them as often as I can. And I guess that's it, you know. I hate to sign off while I'm in such a rush, you know. Not in a rush to leave, just it's that adrenaline thing, man. I love it. So anyway, guys, I appreciate you watching. Thank you for hanging in there for the night. And if you can share it out, I greatly appreciate it. You know, we'll bring you back more. I promise. I got some really strong guests coming in. You guys have a great night. Thank you.